All right, let's begin. So, you wanted to discuss your criticisms of capitalism?
Yes, criticism of capitalism.
All right, so why don't you go first since you have the criticisms?
Well, as you know, I'm a Marxist, and my criticisms of capitalism are standard. Well, let's call them standard Marxist criticisms. But my main one is that capitalism prioritizes exchange value and profit over use value and human, like the betterment of people, the well-being of people.
Okay, so that's your main criticism is that capitalism prioritizes production for profit or exchange value over what people could better use or what's good for people.
Yes.
So so but doesn't doesn't capitalism just produce what people want? Like consumers, what consumers want, isn't that what capitalists have to produce?
All capital is produced for exchange and for money.
Right,
So
they produce to sell to consumers, so they have to produce what consumers want to buy.
yes.
So why is that a bad thing? Why would it be better for them to produce something else, something that people want less?
It's not just like the problem isn't that they produce what people want. It's the way how they produce it and the system of exchange in general.
How they produce it?
Because,
Could you expand on that a little more?
as in the system of production of wage labor and private property.
Okay, so the issue is more with private property and with wage labor, which I guess you view somewhat akin to slavery.
Well, yes, issues is in those things, but I wouldn't call them like slavery, as in child slavery, but like it's its own bad thing.
Right. Okay. So it's a lesser bad. I think we can both agree that chattel slavery is certainly worse than wage labor. Um, okay. So like um, do you don't have a problem with exchange in general, right? Like two people trading. Like if I'm a fisherman, I go out, I catch some fish, I want to trade it to somebody because I have more fish than I can eat. That's not a problem, is it? In your worldview, your system.
Well, not a, it's not immoral to like small exchange. Just exchange in of itself isn't immoral, but it produces a world. It creates a world that isn't good. As you know, in a communist system, there won't be any exchange. There
You
won't be
would just
any
have like a
only.
communal store of goods, like everybody basically produces, and then it all goes to the central whatever distribution, and then it's sort of like well, why don't you tell me? I don't want to tell you what your system is. Why don't you explain how that would work?
Yeah, there will be like, uh, well, in their communism is I divide communism into two like types. There is lower communism, which is like less sophisticated, and higher communism. And in lower communism, everything will be decommodified. You know, there will be except labor, we still have to acquire uh, material and acquire products. And in higher communism, you would uh, there won't be even labor will be decommodified, and you won't have to work. Well, you would work, but there is no like necessity to work.
It's something that you do sort of just because you've got to do something, fill the day.
Mm.
What about raw communism? Do you subscribe to that? Do you believe that there will be a stage of raw communism?
Like the you don't have to work type.
No, like Marx described raw communism as like I guess like the first stage between capitalism and communism.
Like socialism and a
Uh,
lower communism.
yeah, I
Yes.
guess maybe lower communism is raw communism. Okay, so right, so you would say like to each according to their ability, uh,
Yes.
or from each according to their ability, to each
Very
according to
simple.
their need.
Yes, that's the principle in higher communism.
Right, right. Okay, so what's wrong with wage labor? Why is it immoral for somebody to work for a wage?
Mm. It's in well, it's the wait. Do you know what labor theory of value is?
The labor theory of value says basically that labor is the sole source of value. I think. I mean, that's my understanding of it. It might be incorrect.
It's like labor theory of value says that labor creates exchange value. It's the source of exchange value.
Just exchange value, not use value.
Well, it also can create use value.
Hmm. Now, is so would that mean then that value is objective and that uh, the same thing would have the same value for each person because it's the same amount of labor that went into it?
Now, value is determined by the like use value is determined by the amount of usefulness some product has to a person or some group, some individual,
So
and
use
exchange
value
value
use value
comes
is
from
subjective based on an individual's preferences, their goals or whatever.
mm, yes, like it's not like it's subjective, but it's each individual is different, so it has different needs.
Yeah, that's what subjective means, right? That everybody has their own view of it.
Well, like for example, water, food, like housing, clothes, those are objective needs that every person needs. Isn't that correct?
Yes, it's correct that everybody needs water, food, shelter. I mean, depends where you live, but yeah, I mean, maybe some very like tropical places you could get away without shelter,
Mhm.
like Tahiti or something. But yeah, people need water and food for sure,
Um,
and shelter in
mm,
most countries. You need shelter; you'll die from the elements.
mm. So yeah, I could agree that value is subjective, but in the sense that subjective means that it's not that each individual can fully decide what he wants, like what are his needs.
Hmm.
Like the the things he needs are forced upon him.
Some of the
Some things
things,
like hobbies.
but a lot of it is
Yes,
chosen too, right? Like if I choose to play video games, that's a goal of mine. That's not forced on me. That's a choice.
yes, that's correct.
Okay, but so why is wage labor? We never got around to why is wage labor immoral?
Well, then it comes to the exchange value part. Exchange value part of wage labor.
Right,
You mean then it,
like your position is that there's the employer is profiting because they take the surplus labor value, right?
yeah, that's yeah,
So
like that.
each worker has a certain amount of value they produce, and and uh, and the employer profits, yeah, by basically underpaying them or whatever. Um,
By utilizing unpaid labor of the worker.
right, but doesn't the worker still benefit? Like, isn't it still a mutually beneficial relationship because the worker is getting money that he needs in order to buy food, shelter, etc. Like, isn't that a mutually beneficial relationship? The employer and employee.
Yes, but compared to what? Like if you have like a choice between not working and being homeless, like not having any income and having some income, then yes, it's beneficial. But we have a better system that allows for a great amount of wealth and living standards, then the better system would be preferable, of course.
That system being communism.
Yes.
But what about the tragedy of the commons? Okay, this idea that like when things are owned communally, nobody has an incentive to take care of them, but when you own something privately, then you have more incentive to work hard on it. And like if you have a little plot of land, you'll do your most to work on it because you get the reward yourself. Whereas if it's just for the community, it's split between everybody. There's not much payoff to work hard on it.
Mm-hmm. You mean as in a communist society, how would people be ensured to work their share?
Yeah, like I'm just saying, like this is an observable. Even Aristotle observed that property which was owned privately was more productive than communal property, and we saw this in the Soviet Union. Um, Despite private private agriculture being a tiny fraction of like 3% of all the agricultural land, it was responsible for about one third of the output. Just because when something's owned privately, you have a lot more incentive to make sure it flourishes than when it's owned communally.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mean, what about the difference between like, you have your own individual, like, as in individual property that only you have, or like a big businessman who has his own property, but he has to pay workers for them to for to ensure that like for the work
Right.
for the labor.
Uh huh. I don't understand the question.
The effect in like the desire for the wage workers to, as a wage worker, your you work for your wage. Is that you work for your wage to get you work for to get money, and the money and the amount of wage, the amount of money you receive is determined by the business owner,
Uh, yes.
by the
Yes and no. Like the business owner can't just unilaterally decide to pay you whatever he wants. He's got to pay you like the prevailing market wage, or you'll go somewhere else, right?
yes. So in in wage labor, as in a wage in terms of wage work, the goal of the wage laborer is to just get as much money while doing as little work as possible.
Yeah, I'd agree with you that if you like, if you own your own plot of land or your own small business versus if you're working for somebody else, you're probably more incentivized to work harder if it's your own thing than if you're just getting paid a wage. Like I think that's your point, right? Is that accurate?
Yes, because when it comes to wage labor, like big business stuff, the actual goal is about to average amount of effort and average amount of labor time for each worker.
Well, I don't think all workers are going to have that goal. Some will, absolutely. Some will want to work hard. They're worried about getting fired or they want to get promoted. They want to get a raise. So some definitely will uh, like slack or just do the minimum. Some will work hard, but but the employer could always fire the low performing workers as well.
Yeah, but okay. And the goal of the businessman is to of the like of the owner is to get as much work for as little wage as possible.
Yes.
And the goal of the worker is the opposite, to get as
Uh,
much
well,
money
it can
as
be
little work.
the worker definitely wants to get the highest wage possible. Um, like I don't necessarily agree that they want to do as little work as possible. Some do, some don't. Like some people want to work hard. Like they have a really good work ethic, right? Other people don't. They want to slack off. So it's I think it varies from person to person. I don't think you can put all people into the same category there of like wanting to do the least amount of work. I don't think that's accurate.
Yes, but the economic pressure, it would be the most rational to that goal would be the most rational, do the least amount of work for the most money, like get the most amount of uh money per hour of labor. That would be the most rational goal.
Still, I don't think you can ascribe the same motives to every single person. Like people, their psychologies are different. Their experiences are different. They're gonna, some people are just gonna work really hard. Like even if they're not paid much, like that's just who they are. Like for example, people in like the Philippines, they work like really really hard and long hours, even though they're paid like just a very small wage, right? That's just the culture, I guess.
Well, yes, but when it comes to like the average, because in terms of market, you work with like like the median, the average worker and the average owner. That generally is the case. That's the goals.
Yeah, it's one form of
Those are the goals.
analysis. I mean, that doesn't have to be the only form of analysis. You can also analyze things at the individual level. The case of one particular worker. Like you can, yeah, you can view things in aggregates, but that's not always going to give you the most useful picture of things, in my opinion. Maybe I'm mistaken.
Well, of course, like when it comes to small, like individual cases, they have a lot of variety. They can differ slightly. They are not like homogeneous. Not every person is a homogeneous. Like human society isn't just a homogeneous blob. Each individual is different, and each case is different from each other. That's correct.
Indeed, I would
You're correct.
argue, almost the opposite that every individual is heterogeneous. That they're all very unique and different. Even
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree with you. Uh, then yes. Okay, but we're sort of we're off on a tangent here. Let's circle back. So you think capitalism is bad because it's inferior to communism? You think that communism will produce better results for workers, for most people?
Yes, the same way as capitalism is superior to feudalism, then communism is superior to capitalism.
You also view communism as inevitable, right? That it's a law of history. History is determined by material conditions, technological progress, and socialism will inevitably replace capitalism.
Yes, that's how. At least I hope it does replace capitalism.
so, um, so what do you think of the experiments in communism that have been undertaken so far? The Soviet Union, Cuba, China. They went more on a capitalist route. I guess I don't know. You might have some thoughts on the Chinese system.
Yeah, Dengism isn't really like even like it's at most social democracy.
Yeah, yeah, I think I can agree with that. Um, but what are your thoughts on say the Soviet Union and Cuba? Um, was that an socialism or what's your take on those attempts to achieve communism?
When it comes to Soviet Union, I believe that in 1970, it was a dictatorship of the proletariat. Workers rose up and took control of the society. But then later it degenerated into like it lost its revolutionary character and it just stopped being politically. It stopped being an actual communist movement and communist.
Do you, do you would you describe it as state capitalism? I know a lot of communists use that phrase to describe the Soviet Union.
Yeah, I would describe it like state-controlled primitive accumulation. As in Russia there was a ton of pre-capitalist, somewhat feudal things, like during the 19th, early 20th century, and basically the Soviet Union just revolutionized the system from a pre-capitalist one to a capitalist one.
I think people often um, overemphasize how agrarian Russia was towards the end of the Tsarist rule. It was one of the most industrialized nations, behind England, Germany, and France. I think Russia was there as one of the most industrialized and liberal nations.
You think so?
I believe so. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've read some stuff on. I mean, it could be mistaken. Um, I'll send you a couple links after when we're done. It's not really germane to this discussion anyway. So why do you think that it is that there haven't been really any successful experiments in socialism?
Well, for successful like a successful communist revolution, a revolution that actually changes stuff, like overthrows the system, needs to be global. Because if it doesn't succeed globally, it will just be besieged and then degenerate into capitalism.
Okay, so it's got to be global, or at least like a plurality of nations. Otherwise, the forces of capitalism will subvert. What do you think about Venezuela and what's going on right now? There was a contested election recently They've got sort of a, I don't know, socialist or somewhat socialist government.
Mm, I followed it only a little bit, not that much, but I don't think
Why,
they have
hello.
any.
Hey, Ad Astra, how's it going?
It's going incredible. Forward as always. How about yourself?
Good, good. We're just having a debate at the moment. We're debating capitalism versus socialism. Where do you stand? What are your thoughts on capitalism versus socialism?
I think if someone's a socialist, they should be concerned well, never succeeded in history. That should be a primary concern. I'm a
that's,
capitalist.
that's actually what we were just talking about, interestingly enough.
But there are a billion different types of socialism. There's the woo woo type that they call democratic socialism, and then there's like seize the means of production type socialism.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let me ask you, Prisk. Is like the welfare state, the Nordic model? Do you consider that like a form of socialism, social democracy, like soft socialism, or no?
Like it's social democracy, but social democracy is just capitalism with just a nicer face.
Fair enough.
The thing about like a capitalist society or something like that, like America is, if you want to be a socialist, you can be a socialist. But once you seize the means of productions, I'm not allowed to be a capitalist. That just doesn't seem right.
Well,
You can start a business in the U.S. and share the means of production and the right to have a say in the company with your workers. But co-ops usually don't do that well.
yeah. But what's your point? Like,
I just
I don't.
value experiment, and the experiment's been done, it seems, and it didn't work.
Yeah, but of course, like real communism, real socialism, like all the stuff that communists espoused about are impossible, like to do within the current society. You,
So
you
let's
would
not
have to
do it.
like
We agree.
you would have to like completely change the entire society, revolutionize
How do you
everything
do that?
by a revolution.
Evolution. So we do eugenics and make everyone socialist brain. I'm derailing this whole thing. I'm sorry. I'll mute myself.
A communist revolution isn't about everyone being a communist or a socialist or having even left-wing values. No revolution was like that. It's about just changing the system, like transforming a capitalist society into a communist one.
Now let me ask you a
You will
question.
still,
Okay, so you're an egalitarian. You believe that all wealth should be owned equally, basically. Yes.
yes.
So so why is it just if a few people produce some wealth? Why is it just for that wealth to be redistributed from the people who created it to others who played no part in its creation?
But hmm,
Or
that's just
Have you ever?
but what you're
Sorry.
describing is never mind. What you're describing is capitalism. Well, it's also happening under capitalism because the owners like extract. surplus value from the workers.
But the owners also play a part in creation. They supply the capital, um, their risk taking. They might lose money on the whole deal. So they're part. When I say the people go and create wealth, I'm saying the workers and the owner or the entrepreneur. They're sort of both working together, so they both should get paid. But I don't see why some third party who provided neither capital nor labor should also get paid.
Mm, but
And
they
that,
are also producing stuff. Like in communism, everyone will be everyone will be a producer. It's not like people will just a small amount of people will work and then the majority will just consume and do nothing in return.
what would happen to somebody in a communist society who didn't work or who uh, did like a very small amount of work, or didn't work at all, just played video games all day?
In lower stage communism, labor would still be a commodity and you would need to work to get resources. But in higher stage communism, it would be basically all just social pressure and like cultural pressure to work.
So people would say, "Hey, you gotta." They would like guilt trip him, basically.
Like social pressure.
Right. Right. All right. That's reasonable. Um. So would there be money in communism?
Not money as we know it today. In higher stage, upper stage communism, there won't be any money, any exchange. But in lower stage communism, you would still the amount of stuff you consume will be relative to the amount of stuff you produce.
In lower
So it would be
stage.
some sort of like mhm,
That's in the lower stage.
lower stage.
Yeah. The okay. Now, what about like an obese person that wants to eat a lot of food more than they should? How would that be handled?
Mm. What do you mean?
Like in higher stage communism, like uh, is it like you just go like you want to eat, you just go to like a restaurant or the grocery store, you take whatever you want, sort of thing, right?
I guess.
So like, would an obese person be allowed to eat like twice as much as everybody else, or would somebody step in, social pressure again, maybe?
Mm. Yeah, you could just some people just want like to eat more food. Some people like to eat less food. Like if they would be like wasting food, then of course people would step in. But if it's just like overconsumption, as in like in this case of like obese person, then maybe like some small social pressure to just I don't think there will be a problem with in that scenario.
Are you familiar with the calculation problem?
No, I'm not.
So the calculation problem says, okay, so in a socialist commonwealth or communist society or whatever, there's no problem with consumer goods, with the distribution of consumer goods, because anytime somebody goes to a store, they take one down, you just say, oh, we got to refill this when it runs out, whatever. But when it comes to capital goods, without without a price system to allocate the resources on the basis of consumer demand, there's no real way of determining uh, whether which capital goods should be produced.
Which be produced.
Like, do we need more
No.
factories or do we need more mining? It just you wouldn't be able to know that without the price system to guide investment.
Well, I think like this, the problem is that like that they don't have information, or what do you mean? That they
Exactly.
don't know what to produce.
That the information is dispersed throughout all of society based upon ultimately on consumer demand. Uh, and yeah, there's no way of knowing like what higher, because there's different stages of production, right? So the lower stage, you have consumer goods, producing something, just to be used by consumers. But then there's higher stages where you're producing stuff to produce stuff, right? And producing stuff so that you can produce stuff that will produce
Yes.
stuff. Uh, so how would you know which higher order goods to produce without a price system to guide you? Do we need more coal? Do we need more, steel? Like, how would that be resolved?
Yeah. Like as in a like communist society or just a transitionary state.
Either one, yeah. But I imagine a communist society is where the real problem would be. So yeah, communist society, like higher communist.
Okay. I
Mm. Society, is everyone paid the same hourly? How do people get rewarded, or is it moneyless and stateless and all that?
Yeah, I think higher communism would be moneyless and stateless. Well, I'll let Prisk answer. I don't want to speak
I'm
for him.
fine with that because I'll just invent my own money, and there will be no state to stop me.
Yeah, but what are you going to do with your money if
but
nobody
what
wants to take it?
Welcome people into my land.
Your
Who want to
land?
like participate in capitalism?
You don't have any
Well,
land. It's
who's
it's
gonna
all
take
owned.
it from me?
It's all owned by the collective.
Oh, can
well,
they take it from me? That's the question.
as in what do you mean like you just mean some money? That's what you're
I
questioning?
invent currency. Smooth pebbles. We'll trade in that.
Why would people wanna engage with your currency?
People would. I would. First thing I'd do is go to where there's currency.
Well,
I
of
don't know
course
if
you
you're
would like
a hardline communist, though.
like
Have you read the Chad's Bible Atlas Shrugged? Have you read the money speech? It's like it brings tears to my eyes. You should read that. The money speech from Atlas Shrugged.
yeah. I'm definitely gonna read Ayn Rand. That's the best use of my time. It's like you could have the same like question like today. Why uh like
Someone reads it on YouTube. It's
feudalism
like 10
advocate?
minutes long.
Mhm. Okay, maybe I will. I will watch it. But feudalism advocate could do the same thing. Like imagine you are in the Middle Ages and like some kind of person who likes feudalism asks you what's stopping people from a capitalist society from just reinventing feudalism again.
Why would we? One thing works better. Everyone likes it.
Not everyone, apparently.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mean to be rude, but like, I don't understand how people can argue for communism. I don't know if that's what you're arguing for, but it just can't work. Like, it's not possible.
Why? Why can't it work?
Why is it possible?
It can't work unless it can't work without a state. So if your definition of communism is moneyless and stateless society, it can't work. You could say there's a huge state that enforces a moneyless society and delegates jobs to the people for which they're rewarded with food or services instead of money. Maybe that could work. I think that would be horrible. We would stop innovating. We would go backwards. There would be no incentive structure for people to build things and take massive risks to build, like, new stuff, new products, find a need in the market, to innovate, to make phones faster. There would be no competition to, like, feed off of each other. Our extinction would essentially be more guaranteed, even if it held together.
So you don't believe that communism is possible without the state?
Yes, you need a huge state, like a complete authoritarian state, absolute power.
Well, that's interesting because most Marxist thinkers say that communism will abolish the state, and like in terms of that, the state is a product of class struggle and exchange, and as the capitalist society gets transformed into communism, the state will grow smaller and smaller and shrink until it just disappears.
All right, let's look at this stateless communist model for a second. So there's like a common store of goods, right? Where everybody produces, they send their stuff, I guess, to this common store of goods, and then somebody's got to be in charge of it, right? Like, let's say I wanted to go in there and just start destroying it. That obviously would not be allowed. I mean, it's a little absurd that anybody would want to do that, but there are some crazy people in the world. So somebody has to have like control over this common store of goods, right? Somebody's got to be in charge of it.
Yes.
So aren't they the state?
No, it won't be like communism. Won't be like won't be similar to like modern society. It could be best described as one giant company, or ironically, a company, but without any exchange or money.
But the managers or the rulers, the CEO, like wouldn't they be the state?
No, I don't think you could call it a state.
What's the how would you define the state? There's like Weber's definition of the state as a monopoly on force in a given geographical area, or do you have a separate definition?
Well, in Marxism, it is described as like
Sounds like
um,
feudalism to me.
it is, yeah, maybe that definition of state could be as in a monopoly on force. That's similar to what I believe.
Who's gonna do all the dirty jobs and the bad jobs without getting extra reward?
Well, there are, people will be rewarded relative to the difficulty of the job.
Well, who determines the difficulty?
The society at large.
But note that we're moving away from the to each according to
Yes.
their ability, from each according to their need. Actually, I've got that backwards. From each according to their ability, to each according to their need. Now we're moving into a different territory.
Like, yeah,
Yes.
like if you want to be an oil field roughneck, it's an extremely hard job. Not many people want to do that, so they give you a money incentive to do that job, and they make more money than a McDonald's worker.
They make a lot more
Both
than a
can be
McDonald's
equally
worker.
uneducated, a whole lot fucking more, and it's a whole lot fucking harder.
And more dangerous.
Oh yeah. What about people
And
who go scuba diving into sewers?
Is that really a
what do
job?
you
That's
mean?
a real
Like,
that's a real job.
Yikes.
the more difficult something is, the more people, the more like stress and like negative impact is gonna have on the person doing it. So of course it's gonna have a greater reward. So the worker could be replenished for more work.
So they get rewarded for their ability, not their need, like the other guy said.
That's in lower stage communism.
And in higher stage
Okay.
communism?
Oh, excuse me, I didn't hear you.
What? So you said that's in lower stage communism. What about higher stage communism?
I myself don't know. Marx describes it as like a stage of society where labor will be the life's prime need. I concede I don't know exactly how upper stage communist society will look like.
Are you opposed to the division of labor?
Mm. Well, in the capitalist sense, yes.
Like the division of labor being, everybody specializes. One guy's a baker, the other guy's like a teacher, and in doing so, we can be a lot more productive than if we all try to do everything ourselves. Like we could specialize and then trade, or in communist model, I guess, specialize and then whatever, give everything away to each other.
Yes, I think specialization and like efficiency of production is kind of cool when it is for the purpose of like betterment of society and not for profit.
Yeah, I remember something about like Marx was against the division of labor or something like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm mistaken. Hey, how's it
Yes,
going, Uncle Softheads? We're just discussing capitalism versus communism. What are your thoughts on
Amazing.
this contentious subject?
Communism sounds pretty cool, but it keeps fucking up, so it's probably not the way forward. That's it. I like the idea of it. It sounds really appealing, but it has never really worked, and it seems to give up on democracy too quickly, and the division of power just isn't effective enough within the society, and it just continuously fumbles that particular part of the equation, and I just don't trust it enough as an institution.
Maybe we're just too early in human development for communism. Once we're more technologically advanced, maybe more moral individuals, it would work.
I think like automation has been the strongest argument for a form of communism. Like once automation is a big part of our the way economics work. But even then, it's just theoretical. As it is contemporarily, I don't have much faith in it at all.
Especially with the advent of artificial intelligence possibly reshaping
Mm.
the
Yeah, the way we engage with markets, the way we engage with people, the way labor is divided, it completely changes the equation. Where our
It
current
even
institution,
kills then, I would argue.
yeah, correct. Like it will need to change the way we look at markets regardless, and maybe a thing closer to communism will make more sense then. But if we're speaking strictly contemporarily, no, it hasn't worked.
Well, it still couldn't be stateless because you'd have to like enforce, you'd have to like maintain expansion to keep up with the population to maintain production
Oh yeah, there's
until
going
you
to be
fill the
yips and
entire universe.
Yeah, that's why I made like something closer to akin to it rather than more of a liberal open market system. Like I think globalism is pretty much the way forward, and communism inherently is a globalist ideology. So maybe that moving forward does make more sense.
I mean, automation is going to be a huge issue in the future, of course, but I
Yeah,
think
if
you
we
should still have currency, still have a state, and you just have UBI to subsidize
yeah,
people who aren't skilled enough to produce, or give people the
yeah,
incentive to produce art and sell it for money or whatever.
correct. I've never really bought into the whole. No, I know the Soviets attempted the currencyless society and it completely fucking failed. I don't really envision that, and this is where you just get into theory crafting for the most part. But yeah, we could theorize as much as we want, but so much of this shit is just unknown to us. But yeah, whoever and looking at history, whichever society or whichever institutions are the most flexible are the ones that tend to survive. And communism is almost defined by its inflexibility to adapt to a new and ever-changing world. So that's probably a mark against it. Liberalism,
what are some examples of flexible societies in your view, Uncle Soft Hands?
um, the most flexible ones contemporarily would be the liberal democracies. They seem to do the most to adapt to an ever-changing world. Like they seem to like flip-flop between like protectionism, flip-flop towards a more globalist stance when the need arises, mostly due to like the institutions themselves being able to transition through power. Like America, its presidents are very reflective of their times, which I think is makes liberal democracies quite unique comparatively to like say the Soviet Union or any more dictatorial societies or autocratic societies,
What do you
where they
think
tend to have
about direct democracy as opposed to representative democracy? I mean, don't we have the
um
technology now where people could vote on every issue instead of electing people to do it for them?
I I'm just gonna refer to my man Plato and say direct democracy is fucking stupid. And I think he was pretty much on the hit the nail on the head even all the way back then. Like I would put it in the
Yep.
same like pipeline with like communism contemporarily. I just don't see how it could work. It's a nice thought. It's a good moral thought, but I think institutionally it's just a non-starter.
Tyranny of the uninformed.
Yeah, correct. And it's also just mob rule. Mob rule's stupid. Like at the end of the like, if you really want to break it down, like mob rule's ostensibly authoritarianism, where like you get like whichever ethnic group or whichever social group has the most political power, they just completely maintain it through mob rule, and they oppress the minorities. That's ostensibly what authoritarianism is. So I'm just not interested in it. So yeah, direct democracy has, unless I'm mistaken, I don't think it's ever really been tried sincerely. Like in small macro senses, you probably make an argument, but in a sorry, so more micro senses, but in a macro sense, yeah, I can't think of a single example of it.
Yeah, there's some countries that have more direct democracy than others, like Switzerland,
Mm.
for example, but they're still not like a
Yeah, they're a
direct
federation though.
democracy.
Yeah, they're a federation, like so it's a little bit different. I know
Yeah,
their direct states have like a pretty direct democracy, but once it gets to the federal level, it becomes more representative
they have like a
than a
lot of
direct
ballot
democracy.
initiatives, basically, as far as I
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah, correct. In order to keep like the different ethnic groups like in line, they have to give them all pretty equal representation. Otherwise, the whole system just doesn't work. But Switzerland like is a really poor example because they're the definition of the exemption rather than the rule as far as states go. Everything Switzerland does is fucking weird.
Yeah, they're very unique, very successful. I
Yeah.
mean, it's ultra rich
Oh
country.
no, they're a very successful nation. Like you got to say something like Hitler literally saw them as their biggest threat. Like unironically, he thought like Switzerland's democracy was the biggest threat to Nazism, which really says something because they proved that multinational because he thought like the American system was a failure because it didn't account for like black or minorities, and he thought the Switzerland system was a really effective liberal democracy, and he wanted to like purge it as much as he could. Like if you go into his early writings, a lot of it's him just shitting on the Swiss, which is so fucking weird considering who he ended up going to war with. But Switzerland has its issues.
Well, he never really intended to go to war with France and England, as far as my understanding is concerned. He was more interested in expanding eastward.
He really flip flops on it. Like it really depends on where you're sourcing him from. In my Kampf, it's very clear that he didn't want to go to war with the West. But once you get into like when he came into power, his dogmatic approach to like capitalism became very apparent. In fact, he put it like almost at the same level as Bolshevism as a threat to like National Socialism. And by the time like the late 1930s rolled around, yeah, he was pretty gung ho of going to war with the West. Probably much because they kept on fucking with his shit. If the West just went along with his plan, which is what he envisioned in My Kampf, the West would be like all on board with like him fucking up the East, then yeah, probably, but they didn't. They got in his way constantly. So he said, fuck him. It was the Jews. The Jews are in the West. That was his justification.
It's still frightening to me that after, 4 billion years of evolution, we culminated, just, what is it, 80 years ago, you know, uh, uh, a society that wasn't very much different from any other Western nation, to succumb to Nazism. Like, it, it,
Um, yeah, a lot had to go wrong for it to happen. I don't know how familiar you are with like Hitler's rise to power, but it's like a borderline conspiracy level, like stars aligning bullshit had to go down for Hitler to even come close to power.
yeah, well, the
Like considering where
hyperinflation in the Weimar Republic definitely helped pave the way.
it's more to the fact that he wasn't shot. Like after the B-hole push, the fact that he wasn't shot for that is kind of insane. He only got a year in prison. Like he tried to coup the government, and they caught him red-handed. He even admitted to it. He gave like an hour speech to how he was justified for it, like in fucking court. They should have just shot him, like they did like so many other people who tried to do the same shit.
Yeah, that's curious. Why did he just get 1 year?
I don't know. That's what I mean by like when you really look into it, it's like border like why is there not more conspiracy theories about this? Like it's kind of fucking crazy. And then like after a year in prison, like Hindenburg basically just picks him out because he's like the most fiery rhetoric and he just gives him the chancellorship. He barely even had like I think like at the time he had like 30% or something. There were other parties that had higher levels. Why the fuck did he choose the nutbag? I don't know. It's a good question. He never wrote about it. Hindenburg never gave his reasoning for it. It's weird.